Hi there, welcome back everyone. We are here for another tea garden chat, and I'm really excited today to be talking with you about three common herbs that can be really helpful during the cough and cold season. So last week we talked about creating your materia medica and working with herbals and with medicinal plants. And so I wanted to piggyback on the purpose of that materia medica and actually dive into some of the medicinal properties of these herbs and how you could use them to support your health and your family's health and those of your loved ones if you're experiencing a yucky cough or a cold or something that's getting you down right now. So, I'm going to be talking specifically about three particular plants. Of course, there are many other plants that would fit into the categories of herbal action that I'm going to be talking about. We talked about that with our materia medica, that we want to know what the herbal action of a plant is. And so we're going to be looking at this, but of course, know that this is not, an exhaustive list. This is just three little tips to help you get through and start your journey with herbalism and working with these medicinal plants. So, the first plant I want to talk about is actually, I jokingly call her my garden muse because I absolutely adore this plant. And the Latin name is Malva sylvestris. I just think that she sounds like she's my garden mistress with this Malva sylvestris, and so I've nicknamed her my garden muse. But this is known as the common mallow plant, right? Or sometimes it's known as high mallow or tall mallow. And this is a beautiful plant in the marshmallow family. It is native to Western Europe, but actually it's traveled around and diversified where it is growing nowadays. You can find it all over the world. I like to find this plant in the wild, and I also love to find it in and grow it in my garden. So what's beautiful about mallow, and this basically includes the whole mallow family, even though I'm specifically talking about common mallow, or what's known here in the German-speaking world as Ville Malve. Um, what's beautiful about this plant is its action, that herbal action of demulsifying things. So, what the heck does that mean if something is a demulcent? What that means is that it has, when it's infused into a tea, it has a mucus like substance in the body of the plant that comes out into the tea. So, we call this mucilage, right? And this is a demulcent tea. And so when we have this kind of tea, it can be very, very helpful for a dry or spasmodic cough. Because what's happening is we've got a lot of tension, we've got a lot of inflammation in the esophagus and the throat passages, and they really can become very raw and irritated. And so if you've ever, woken up with kind of this pesky cough in the middle of the night that's keeping you awake, this is when you want to reach for a demulcent herb, and the one I like to use is this common mallow, right? And what is important to know about working with this plant is that, in fact, it's a little counterintuitive because we can make a hot tea and we will still get some medicinal benefit. But actually, when we're working with demulcent herbs, you will get more benefit from the plant. You will get more of the constituents that make up the plant if you actually make a cold infusion. And so that's why I want to highlight that, because this is a way where we can change how we infuse our tea rather than using boiling hot liquid and making a tisane, or what we think of as a regular herbal infusion, or even a decoction where we're brewing something or steeping something for a longer period of time. We can actually make a passive cold infusion and we'll get more medicinal benefit. So this can be as simple as either taking some of the flower and leaf of the common mallow, or taking the root Either works. You'll get slightly more mucilage and demulcent qualities if you use the root than if you use the flower and leaf, but both have benefits. Um, and then all you do is you take about, say half a cup of this dried material to say 2 cups of cold water, and then you literally just let that sit on the counter. Maybe you want to infuse it outside in the moonlight, however you feel like working with it energetically. But making that cold infusion, it allows all of that demulcent quality to come out and infuse in the water so that when you drink it, it will be really refreshing and soothing for any inflamed tissues. And this, can work for specifically for coughs, which we're talking about today. But it's also important to know that it works on other soft tissues. So if you're having a lot of irritation in your gut, maybe an irritable bowel, right? Something like this demulcent herb will also really help you because that mucilage will help to coat and soothe those irritated soft tissues. So just also be aware that this is really meant for kind of a dry, hacking cough. If you're having something where you have a really wet cough, and a lot of you already have a lot of mucus and phlegm, then you may want to use something that's slightly more astringent, right? And that brings me to the second herb that I want to talk about today, which is sage. And so sage in Latin is known as Salvia officinalis. And in Greek, the word salvia actually means to save. So this is, kind of a grandmother herb for me. It's one of these ancient herbs that really carries a lot of medicinal qualities with it, but it's very much known as the mouth and throat herb, right? And what we can do is if we are having a sore throat that's going along with the cough, or if we're having any kind of, mouth sores, maybe you have some canker sores or cold sores, this is also a really beneficial tea because of the way that the astringent properties work against those yucky microbes that we're trying to fight off in this cough and cold season. And the other thing to know with sage is you can just make it as a tea, but because it has a slightly astringent, slightly bitter taste, right? It's a very drying herb. Um, and so, what that does is it really helps with inflammation in the throat and it really helps to soothe. But also, it can mean that the taste is quite strong. And so, what you may want to do is you may want to make your a strong tea, a strong infusion with this herb sage. But then, instead of drinking it, if that is too much for you, just use it as a gargle, use it as a mouthwash, and then you will actually get the benefits and be healing your sore throat and the irritation and inflammation that can be going on in your throat and anything going on in the mouth without actually having to drink this rather astringent and pungent tea. If you do want to drink the tea, you can also add in honey and lemon so that you can make that a little bit more palatable for yourself. And of course, honey with all of its beneficial properties and lemon will also help you as well. So that's a great combination to either, put those things together and make a sage tea with honey and lemon so it's a little bit more flavorful for your palate, or to just make a strong sage tea and then use that as a gargle or a mouthwash when you're having any kind of sore throat irritation. Okay, and the last herb I want to talk with you about today is rosehip. So this is from the rose plant. So this is from the Rosa species or family. And what you might not know about rose is that actually the entire plant is edible. It's from the apple family. So when we think of small little apples like crab apples, that's what the rose hip reminds me of. So when the plant is growing, it's first growing as a rose, and then The fruit is the rose hip. Okay, and so that is like the little thing that looks like a little ball. You'll see it in the picture that I shared for this talk. Um, and the rose hip is really beneficial because of the vitamins and minerals that it contains. So it has a lot of vitamin C, an incredible amount of vitamin C. It's also high in vitamins E and B. And so I wanted to include this particular herb because it has a really nutritive quality to it. So it's supporting your system when you're having a cold, not just because of the extra vitamin C, but it's actually what we know as a tonic, right? So it tones your systems. It helps to create this harmony and balance in the body. And it's nutritive with all of these vitamins and minerals so that it's nourishing you, right? What we need for our immune systems when we're experiencing a cold, sometimes we need a spike in activity, but sometimes we just need that gentle support underlying what we're trying to do to make ourselves feel well again, right? And that's where the rose hip comes in. And you can, of course, make tea from rose leaf or rose petals. And I use all of those things in various tea blends. But specifically today, I wanted to talk about rose hip because of this nutritive tonic quality that it has, because it's also slightly astringent, right? A lot of these herbal actions will find that, they may primarily be one or the other, but often they span several categories because plants are just magical like that, and they can do many things all at once, just like nature. So, when we're working with rosehip, the other thing to know is that it's got a beautiful kind of tart, zingy flavor to it. So it's great to add into blends where you want a little bit of tartness, a little bit of sweet kick to it. This can be a really nice flavoring herb to add into your tea blends, and then you're getting that added benefit of the nutritive qualities and the tonic qualities. Um, and Monica was asking if we can use fresh or dried sage for the tea, and either is fine. So really with all of the herbs that I recommend, if it's something that can only be used in one way, I'll let you know. But otherwise, just be aware, and I've talked about this before, that when you're using fresh herbs, you need to use a greater quantity in your infusion. So this is a great question because when we're working with dried herbs, we want about 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried mixture per 8 ounces of water or per cup of water. That's about 240 ml, right? But when we're working with fresh herbs, because they haven't dehydrated and sort of condensed their medicinal qualities, we want to use more of them in order to get the same benefit. So in contrast, we would use about 1 or 2 tablespoons of fresh herb versus 1 or 2 teaspoons of dried herb. So I hope that makes sense, but feel free to use whatever you have on hand. And yeah, I just want to highlight that, these are the things that we're trying to do when we ourselves are experiencing a cough or a cold, or we have loved ones that we're trying to care for, right? We're basically looking for something that's going to soothe irritated tissues, right? Which will be the demulcent herb, the mallow. We want to look for something that can help to alleviate pain and inflammation, and can be astringent and drying and clearing up the infection, whether that's viral or bacterial, doesn't really matter. And then we want to use those astringent herbs like sage. And then finally, we want to support in an ongoing way our body systems, our immune system, and bring in those nutritive or tonic herbs like rose hips, like I talked about. So have fun with this. I hope you enjoy making some tea blends with these. I was actually thinking about going out in my garden and grabbing some sage and some rose hip just to enjoy the flavor today. I hope you have have a wonderful cup of tea wherever you are. Thank you for joining me for these tea garden chats, and I will go ahead and see you again next week. Have a good week, everybody.